that was a show. I didn't think it would be there for a minute. Let me give a little bit of backstory. My name is Tom. My day job is I'm a touring front of house audio engineer. Currently on tour with a country artist. We do about 100 shows a year, and I've been touring professionally for about 10 years now. For this particular tour, we have one semi-truck that carries all of our gear, our consoles, our microphones, our entire audio package, plus the band's gear, like their instruments, what they play today, plus all of our lighting, video, and all of our production. On this fine day in Chicago, we were slated as the direct support slot. And we were right in front of a really cool rock band that a lot of people remember from the 90s, the couple hits they had. So everyone was really excited. Our management brought out a media team, and we were going to be recording and grabbing a lot of things for social media. So there was a lot of excitement for the show, and everyone, including the crew, was really excited for it. On top of the crew being excited for it, there were also expected to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 30,000 people at this festival, and we wanted to give them a great show. So we arrive in the morning like normal. I had a cup of coffee. We had a time that we were scheduled to load in. It was a little bit earlier than normal, but not out of the realm of any possibility. So I was walking around with my coffee, getting ready to unload a truck, and that time came and passed, and we weren't really worried about it. Like, you know, trucks run late, buses run late, traffic happens, people are human. No one was really worried about it for a while. And then our load-in time came and passed, and then more time passed. And then we started to get a little bit worried. And some phone calls started to happen, and we all started to look at each other, trying to figure out what was going on. So then we were about an hour into our slated load-in time, and we finally hear from our truck. Remember, we're in Chicago, and we get the call that our truck is still in Nashville. That's about 8 to 9 hours drive if you're booking it, and this is a semi-truck. Did I mention that all the gear that we use to put on a show is in that truck? So, here we were. The show must go on. Spoiler alert, the show did go on. We made it happen. We put it all together. We even had a guest performance from that super cool headlining band that I talked about. It did work out in the end. Not exactly the way that we intended it to, but we made it. Here's what I want to do. I want to break down a couple things that really saved me and saved the day that day, and hopefully we can all learn something from this. And maybe the things and gear and techniques and mindsets that I'm going to talk about might help you one day when this will happen to you, because it's going to happen to all of us one day. Number one, and this is probably the least sexy thing to talk about. It's not gear. It's not a cool microphone technique. It's not a piece of software that you can download. But honestly, it's just your attitude and how you respond to stressful situations. I am so proud of the people that I work with in that we were able to keep our cool. And basically what happened is our production manager came over to us and very calmly just told us, here's the deal. Truck's not here. It's not going to be here for a while. And he paused, and I think we kind of all collectively had just this moment of, well, crap. Now what? And that's what's important here, is the now what. Don't just go sitting around throwing around a bunch of blame, trying to pin it on someone else and just getting pissed and throwing stuff. Like, that's not going to help anybody. Everyone was super aware that the clock is ticking, and just getting mad doesn't help that clock slow down any at all. So give yourself a moment to just digest the situation, and you got to keep moving. So, crap, what now? And the thing that took me a minute to realize is that your attitude is something that you can work on. It's something that can change. It's not just a permanent part of your personality. How you respond to things when they don't go your way is something that you can practice, because in the live world, things don't go your way a lot. And so you can practice how you respond and how you go about your day when things don't go right. And the more you can train yourself to respond in a, what's next kind of way, and not just get mad and just get pissy at other people, the better you are going to be at your job, the better that the people around you are going to respond, and the more the people around you are going to respect you. So attitude is the number one reason why I think this show was able to happen, is that everyone just got our heads down and got to work. All right, so the second thing we did is we came up with a plan, and then we came up with another plan. And you can think of it as a good, better, best scenario, or like a wishful thinking and then a reality scenario, or just a plan, just like this is plan A, this is plan B. And however you want to frame it, go with it, but have more than one, because if your day hasn't gone right once, there's a good chance it's going to continue. We came up with a plan A and a plan B right then and there, sitting in the parking lot. We were told that the truck was going to leave Nashville immediately, and the best guess was that that truck was going to arrive at the festival about an hour to an hour and a half before our slated showtime. So we normally take longer than that to load in, but this is an exception. This was an emergency. It would be uncomfortable, but we could do it. And we all agreed that, like, this is the situation. We can get this up and running in an hour if we absolutely have to. So that was plan A. And it would be a sweaty, frantic mess, but we could get all of our stuff up and running and do the show as normal. But that hinged on that truck getting there, and we weren't exactly ready to take that chance of putting all of our nuts in that one bag. So we came up with a plan B. At most every large concert or festival like this, there is going to be a production company who's providing things like the PA or the video wall or the lights. And mostly they're there to supply for the bands who might be earlier in the day, the opener bands who might not have the logistics or the budget to carry their own sound guys, their own sound equipment, or any of the other gear like that. So the sound company or the lighting or the production company will normally have some form of equipment on site ready for kind of whatever is thrown at them. We had not coordinated with the local production company to tell them what we wanted or what we needed, because we, of course, weren't planning on using their gear. But here we were, and we had to just say, what do you have? Is it okay if we use it in this situation? And this local production company were true professionals, and they said, absolutely, we know what's going on. Here's what we have. It might not be what you have in your truck, but feel free to use it. And thank you very much to them. You guys made it work. So there you have it. We had a plan A, we had a plan B, and we decided to execute. Now, what that meant was we weren't just going to sit around and wait for plan A to maybe work. We needed to move forward throughout the day as if plan B were the only plan in place. Second spoiler alert, plan B is the way this day unfolded. So we decided to move forward with the day, assuming that plan B was going to be our backup, but that we needed to move forward as if that was the only option. So we went and saw what gear was available to us. And here's kind of my next point. It will pay huge dividends to you to know the technology that's around in the real world. Not just what you're carrying, not just maybe what you're most comfortable with, but having a breadth of knowledge of things that are out in the world, so that in any random situation, you can be thrown onto a piece of gear that maybe you're not terribly familiar with, and you can make it work. Familiarize yourself with industry alternatives and other technologies that are coming out in the world. It helps. It's time consuming, and it's really geeky to just sit on YouTube or go pouring through manuals to figure out how these things work. But there will be a situation, I promise you, when you are thrown into a situation where you just have to make it work. And there are other benefits, like using a different platform might challenge the way that you work, how you do things, and how you go about setting up your workflow. Let me take just a minute to talk really narrowly about audio gear, because you've landed on a page about audio, so let me gear nerd out for a little bit. Here is something that absolutely saved the day today, and one that I think serves a lot of good for being a competent and learning audio engineer. Offline editors are your friend. If you're not familiar, an offline editor is effectively all of the software of an audio console that you can just load up on your laptop. So it's not the hardware. You can't plug a microphone in, you can't plug a speaker onto the output, but it is the brains and how a console thinks and operates that you can plug away with and manipulate however you want. And I think it serves two purposes. One, if you're trying to get familiar with a piece of gear, learn the software. How is it organized? How is the file structure working? How do you navigate around the thing? It'll make you more comfortable on it without actually having to go rent or buy this piece of gear and sit in front of it. You can have a really good understanding of how to get around it if you know how the software works. There are also all of the managerial tasks that you can handle on an offline editor. Like if you're going to be thrown onto a console that you can't get in front of until the day of, you can pull up an offline editor and you can type in all of your channel labels, and you can maybe color code or do some basic signal routing or grouping, and you can lay out the desk how it makes sense to you, all without actually being in front of the desk. And then you save that to a thumb drive and you load that up on the console when you're finally there, and boom, you've already done all of the kind of administrative tasks that normally take a lot of time, and you have to sit there with touch screens and all kinds of stuff that we don't like. You can take care of that ahead of time. On top of that, I don't know of any manufacturer that charges for their offline editors. They're all free. You just go to the manufacturer's website and download whatever you'd like. So I really encourage you to do this for consoles you know, for consoles you don't know, for ones that you're interested in. Have at it. One caveat I do have to mention is that about half of the major console manufacturers, their offline editors run on Windows only. So if you're like me and you have a MacBook, you might need to invest in something like Windows Parallels, or go get yourself a really cheap Windows PC. However you want to handle it, but getting a Windows-capable machine is probably going to be necessary. And side note for you live sound engineers out there, there seems to just be a lot of software that is still PC only. Having a Windows operating system and running Parallels or whatever you need to do is still very valuable in 2026. All right, so back to the story for a little bit about how this day is going. A little bit of background information. We tour on Yamaha Ravage PM10 consoles. I love them dearly. It is my favorite console that I've ever worked on. I think they sound great and the workflow is awesome. It is Yamaha's flagship console though. So they're expensive and they're not terribly plentiful. So I went out to front of house, I introduced myself, and I said, what do you have here that I might be able to mix on? And what they had was a CL5. And for those of you who aren't familiar with, a CL5 isn't that much older than a PM10. They do retail for about a quarter to 30% of what a Ravage is. So they're just at a different point in the market. They're a very different price tier. They do different things. They have different capabilities. And that was what I was going to be working with today. The job was to make it work. A lot of these console manufacturers have conversion software where you might be able to take a show file from one of their consoles and transfer it onto a different one. Yamaha has that, but it's quirky at best. And to go from Ravage to CL5, you actually needed to convert it to something else in the middle, which is a DM7. And I've done that, and I had very mild results. So I made the decision that that was too many moving parts, too many areas for possible error. So I made the decision that I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to start with the default console setup, plug in the names of my channels, and start from scratch. And then at Monitor World, they had a Digico SD10, which is a completely different manufacturer and like nothing that we normally tour with. Thankfully for us, we've done a lot of fly dates and Digicos are very popular, so we have done shows on Digicos, and my monitor engineer had show files saved from previous shows that we've done on Digico desks. They were not necessarily on an SD10, but there was a workaround for that. Again, I had to open up my laptop and open it up into Windows, and there is a file converter that you can run. So I think he had a show from an SD12 or something like that, and I was able to run the conversion software, and it pretty fluently plugs it into the SD10 footprint. Now, my monitor engineer is also our production manager, and the production manager, on a day when the truck doesn't show up, has about 30 fires blazing in his face. So he was off handling God knows what, bless him, but he had his work cut out for him, and that job just didn't allow him a lot of time to fiddle with a console. He trusted me, and I was fluent enough in the Digico world that he just handed me his show file. I did the conversion. I whipped up what we were going to need for our guest spots that evening, and I was able to get his show file to a working spot where he could just show up and mix, and in the meantime, he could deal with the countless number of fires that we were dealing with that day. Okay, back really quickly to setting up my console from scratch. One of the other things that was clicking down the clock is this console was going to be used for the opening acts, so I didn't have all day. At some point, I needed to turn it over to the local production so that they could run the opening acts, so I had to beat feet to get this thing up and running. Know your workflow is my next tip. It seemed silly while the clock was ticking. I was entering in names of channels and then picking colors for every channel. Like, that seemed like a silly thing to do, but I know in the heat of the moment that that is something that my brain can process very quickly. I know when I see a red channel, that's drums. I know that when I'm searching for my lead vocal channel, I just have to find the pink channel, and I know for always that is my lead vocal. And that's just a very fast way that I can take in all this data into my brain and organize it in a way that I can react quickly. Because that was going to be the name of this game. Without a proper sound check, which we didn't have a proper sound check, I was going to need to be able to work very quickly and very efficiently. I have in my brain a checklist of things that help me navigate and get around a desk very quickly and efficiently. So things like color coding, things like VCAs, where I have a very few number of faders to deal with, and that controls the whole band. With VCAs, I can effectively mix the entire show on just 8 faders. I have a layer called show, which has my really key inputs like my vocals and my lead guitars and things like that, but I can pretty much mix the whole show on VCAs. And then there's things that I could drop, like I normally like to do a lot of interesting parallel paths and bus compression in groups. I knew I just didn't have time for that. What it would have gained me in the long run was extra complication, which I didn't have time for setting up or during the show. So I decided that that was not something I was going to worry about in the moment, but rather speed and efficiency navigating was what was most important. So know your workflow, know what's important to you. Side note, extra tip, ask for help. The people around you are smart. Like, ask, especially if you're on a borrowed desk and the guy who brought it is there, ask for help. They know the gear, they know what they brought. Don't let your ego ruin the show. I got stuck. I'm like, dude, I don't know how to save this thing. How do you work this? And he took over and he helped me out, and he's like, is this okay? And we collaborated and we worked together to make the show work. So don't be afraid to ask for help. That brings me very neatly to my last tip, which you need to think about before the show, but it really comes to a head during the show. Task prioritization. So how the day went, I had no time to sound check at all. The first time I heard any input through the desk was during our 30-minute changeover. So we finally wheeled the rented drum set and rented amps and everything else that we had never played through before, and I borrowed a set of headphones and I put them on, and that was the first time I got to mix any of the drums, was in headphones during changeover. I had to work quickly and efficiently, and I just had to do whatever I could get done in headphones before I unmuted the PA in front of 30,000 people. So take a look at this video. This is a video that I set up because I knew this was going to be something I wanted to look back on. This is right before the show got started, and this is basically when I'm waiting for the band to walk on. As the show is just about to begin, where my hands are is my right hand is on the mute group, so as soon as they're ready to play the first note, the band opens up, and my left hand is on the gain knob for the lead vocal. I didn't get to hear his vocal mic because our artist was busy in a meet and greet like he normally is before the show. So we weren't able to test his microphone. The vocal is the most important part of the show. It has to be heard from the very start. I was ready as soon as I possibly could with those two primary controls right in front of me. And I took some time to lay out the desk so that those were right in front of me the entire time. So the show started, and yeah, I wasn't happy with the attack and release times of the snare drum, and I knew I wanted to bring out some high end from the guitars, but the vocal had to take precedent. So you have to be able to lob off these tasks that are going to get in the way of what is most important. You have to prioritize the moneymaker. In most cases, it's the lead vocal. So with all these techniques in place, we were able to pull off a show. I take a lot of pride in presenting a show that sounds great, that everything is in proportion and it sounds like and feels like the record, and that's something that I really enjoy doing. It didn't sound as polished as the show I'm normally able to present, but the people in the audience sang along and they danced along and they looked like they were having a great time. So ultimately, that's a win. It sounded like the artist, and people recognized that. So we got there. A lot of sweat and a lot of tears later, we got there. By the way, the truck showed up 30 minutes after we started playing. So it made it. That's good. So yeah, this was a weird one. It was a stressful one, but follow these steps, and when this ultimately happens to you, you might be able to pull out the same way I was. So yeah, this was a weird one. This was a stressful one. But if this ever happens to you, follow a couple of these steps and you too might make it to the end. And the show will go on. Be safe out there. Have fun. Stay hydrated. See you next time.